Welcome. I am Peter Jefferson. The year is 1745, going on 1770. In 1745, I was creating with Joshua Fry a map of Virginia. The map is behind me. It was finished in 1751, and I died shortly after that. The key thing about this map isn't that it's there, but how I made it. I was walking the chain in areas that had not yet been explored, meaning native areas with First Peoples, and yet walking the chain, which is a slow, tedious process of taking measurements to be able to point every direction for every item on the map. I was able to do that without either myself or any of the people with me being harmed by the locals. How did I do that? Unfortunately, very little has been said about what relationship was between the colonists and the First Peoples in the early years. Most of the writing was done by the priests, and they had a tendency to view it in a very different way. When I first met the natives before I went over the Appalachian Mountains, the Smoky Mountains, before I went over there, I had the good fortune of running into and spending time with a number of first persons who gave me some instructions on courtesy in terms of being among the first people. Now, when I got to the areas where they would encounter local people, since I wasn't hunting or doing anything they recognized, I was literally pulling chains across the ground, they were more curious than angry. And so they would approach me. And using some of their sign language and learning how to talk with them and having somebody with me that had some language abilities, we were able to communicate enough for me to explain I was basically trying to create a map. Once that was understood and they understood what a map was, I was almost immediately adopted into the Wolf clan of the people. Now, it's important, most people will ask you, well, what tribe was it? There wasn't any tribes. The first people did not have tribes. They had villages. And the villages were just people in the same location. Their relationships were clan-based. And the clan-based relationships went beyond the villages. So, the village that I was adopted into, which was probably a Shawnee group, they adopted me not as a member of the village or a member of the local group. They adopted me as a member of a clan, the Wolf clan. Why the Wolf clan? Because in the people, the First Peoples, the Wolf clan were the seekers. They were the discoverers. They were the ones that went out first to see what was ahead to make sure it was safe for the others that were following behind. And since I was making a map, I was doing basically the same thing, and that's why they thought me valuable. But in all honesty, there was another benefit that I had. I stand around 6'4" and weigh about 250 pounds American. That made me bigger than any of them, and as a man in charge and doing something of a specialty, I was considered to be someone of a special capability, which made me very popular. Now, what that meant was the clans within the village I started at all had women, and their women were in fact young and very agreeable to having sex with men from other clans. Even whether or not they were the colonists, didn't matter to them, a Frenchman, Englishman. They were looking for character traits that by having children with these men, they could have that character trait brought into their clan. So to them, sex was both a recreation, but also a means of fortifying, strengthening, improving the clan. And they saw me that way. So there were a few nights that I was spending among the villagers that I didn't have company. Now, all the children in the clan were in fact considered to be the mother's children, and the fathers had nothing to do with them. As a matter of fact, in many cases, the fathers never knew that they were the fathers of the children. It was the brothers of the children and the uncles of the children that raised them and did all the things that in a European family would have been done by a father. But because there is no father, and there is no patrilineal society where the property of the father is passed on to the eldest son, it didn't matter who the father was. And marriage was totally unnecessary. Unfortunately, 100 years after I was there, everything changed. The priest came in. They saw it as liberalism beyond belief, incest. They thought the men in the clan were having sex with the women in the clan because they slept together. And that wasn't the case. They didn't have sex in the clan houses because there were anywhere from 10 to 70 people in a clan house. You don't have sex with a bunch of people. The sex was done out in the open, in the rivers, in places that were private, where it can be enjoyed and not be somebody else's recreation for observation. Because of that, I had many young people who recognized me from their mothers and their cherished grandmothers of their clans as being their father. And I was always recognized as a member of the Coyote clan, which allowed me to travel this entire area freely without any interruption from the locals. Now, how did I first get in there? I knew I could not do anything that had an issue to their food supply. You don't shoot a deer because the deer are all considered part of a village's property belonging. Each deer is recognized as belonging to a specific clan. Same thing with turkeys. Turkeys and deer, as are elk and other animals, depending on whether they're going further north or further south or further west, they're local. They spend their time in a particular area, and so every village knew every primary animal, deer, turkey, in their area, and they would have council meetings when the new barns were coming out, and they would know each new barn and decide which clan had claim to that, and then the clan could decide when they wanted to harvest their particular animal. So although they didn't put their animals in a farm or in a cage or in a fenced-in area, they knew in their hunting ground at all times where every one of their animals were. Now, if a bear came in and killed one of their animals, then they sent out a group of warriors to kill the bear, or at least to drive it away. But if it killed one of their animals, if it had not killed an animal yet, they would drive it away. But if it had killed an animal, then one of the clans, had lost some of their food. So the bear would be killed, and in an equal quantity of food, based on how much they'd lost, a deer or two deer or what, would go to those clans that had claim to it. The rest of the food would be divvied up with the other clans and with the hunters, and then the hunters always got the claws, the teeth, and other elements that might be considered of value in that animal. Same thing would be true with a wolf pack. If the wolf pack attacked the deer, they would kill at least one or more of the wolf pack to make up for the lost animal. And the same thing was true of the turkey. Now, geese were constantly coming and going. Anybody could kill a geese, anybody could kill a duck, anybody could kill a rabbit or a squirrel, a beaver. These small animals, fox, the small animals were actually nuisances. And they were constantly trying to keep their populations down. So somebody going through their land, killing the small rodent-type animals, was doing them a benefit. So they were treated as guests, not as outlaws. They were outsiders, but they understood courtesy. And that's what I was able to do. Why is that important? Because when my son, young Tom, moved into his Monticello in Albemarle, and there was battles going on, wars going on, that were creating a battle. This is the road that the first people used to gather from the southwest or the southeast peoples, such as the Cherokee, the Creeks, and so forth, up to and join with the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee, and some of the others in the north so that they were joining either the English or the French in the French and Indian War, or they were joining the British or the colonists in the Revolutionary War. If they're battling and they're against the colonists and they're traveling up this road here, and Albemarle, Monticello is right there, it's less than a day's walk off the trail to destroy the Monticello. Yet never was my home or young Tom's home attacked by the Native Americans. As a matter of fact, just as I did, he had natives coming to him, first people coming to him, who he would spend time with, he'd feed, they'd stay at his house or within his lands and move on, which, to be honest with you, most of them were probably my children. Maybe not all, but probably most of them. So I wanted to give a little bit of an outline of both the area and the conditions at the time that Joshua Fry, who was basically staying in the Williamsburg doing the map, while I was out running the chains across and doing what was in fact the first map of Virginia. Thank you.